Right. All right. Very welcome everybody to part 13. Yes, I think it's part 13 in our CR and SC practice series where I curate a set of questions, a mixed bag of questions, testing various concepts of CR and SC and, just club them together so that, we don't get bored or bogged down or, we don't get bogged down by the monotony of solving quite a lot of verbal questions in one go. So I try to mix and match so that, the engagement level uh, is high so that the interest level is high because it's very different. The tone completely shifts when you move from one assumption question to a modifier question, or from a modifier question to a flaw question or a strengthening or weakening question, right? So uh, I've been doing this for a while, where I think this is part 13 in this series. So if you've not checked out the other 12 parts, be sure to do that right after watching this video. In the meantime, uh, allow me to begin by giving you an introduction to the Unacademy platform. So, Unacademy is perhaps India's largest learning platform today when it comes to preparing for all sorts of competition exams, all competitive exams. And this particular YouTube channel is for management exams. It's called Crack Management Exams. Management exams like your CAT, GMAT, NMAT, ZAT, and the likes. I am Prankur Arora. I am going to be your instructor on this journey of learning. Um, I've been a trainer and a coach for a better part of the last couple of years. I've also had the opportunity to consult with various organizations, different organizations from very many industries, organizations like Becton Dickinson, Interglobe, Marico, PGCIL, FMC Corp, and and a lot more, right? And I've consulted with them on various aspects of communication, be it verbal or non-verbal, how we can increase the efficacy, how we can increase the productivity of an organization by increasing the productivity of of communication. Yes, so I've worked on those lines quite a bit. I'm also a published author. I wrote this book called It's Not Funny. It's a work of satirical fiction, right? So if you're fond of fiction, or if you're fond of reading, or if you're just fond of, dark sardonic humor, then be sure to check this book out. It was reviewed. It was positively reviewed by the likes of Biswapati Sarkar, Papa CJ, Rohini Lal. These are the humorists that I really, really admire. I also hold advanced certifications in facilitation from an organization called Leadership Management International. LMI is an American organization, perhaps the largest in the field of transformational leadership. It's based out of Texas. Yeah, it's a Texan organization. I also run a production house of my own. It's called Tamasha Entertainment, where currently we are working towards building a channel for creative arts excellence. Like a funnel kind of a channel, right? So that's pretty much about me. Welcome aboard this journey of learning. I'll be taking you through quite a few aspects of verbal aptitude and reading comprehension in the coming weeks. So there are quite a lot of features that help an academy stand out, that help an academy be a cut above the rest. Some of those features include stuff like giving you access to daily live classes, where you get to have real time interaction with the educator, right? Engaging in discussions, asking doubts, participating in live polls. So, all that happens during the lesson itself on the subscription platform. Now, understand that this is very much, it's we all understand that this is not physical learning, right? Physical learning is very different, but when it comes to virtual learning, the caveat is to maintain that level of engagement between the learners and the educator, and an academy has managed to do that by innovating on its platform. So the pedagogy is very, very unique in that sense. We also have lots of live tests and quizzes where we evaluate your performance, right? So we show you a mirror into your performance, right? The evidence is right there for you to look at, gain perspective from, and then tweak your learning journey, right? Do some course correction if need be. How do we do that? We do that by giving you data like the time you're spending on every question, right? Your accuracy section wise, stuff like that, which will actually help you develop perspective and do some course correction if need be. All the courses on the platform are structured courses. They're audited by subject matter experts. Yes, they are created by subject matter experts. Plus, with one subscription, you get unlimited access to anything and everything on the platform. All sorts of live and recorded courses. Right. So, the educators on the platform, as I mentioned, are all credible people who've mentored aspirants successfully to, various top tier business schools. um, you can experience the live classes free of cost and then decide for yourself whether this is something worth adding to your learning journey or not. And understand that, with the live classes, there's a lot more that will come to you, lot more benefits that will come to you once you subscribe to the platform. Batches and courses keep on going live on the platform on a daily basis, so you don't really stand to miss out on anything based on when you're enrolling or when you're subscribing to the platform. Because for example, if you were to join today, right, if you were to join today, everything that came before you subscribe to the platform, it's made available to you in the form of recordings. Plus everything that will come will be something very new for you to experience. Language is never a barrier because we've got educators who teach in vernacular languages as well. Apart from that, the entire ownership of designing a schedule, it's left to you, because you decide what are the kind of courses you want to enroll into. You decide who are the kind of educators you want to learn from, right? So the entire ownership is on you. Plus, what we do is we'll send you those reminders, we'll send you those push notifications so that you don't really miss out on anything that you set your eyes on. As I mentioned, right, the kind of interaction that will happen between the learners and the educator on the platform, it's all in real time. It's all very, very significant because it is happening in real time. Um, as I mentioned, when we conduct those tests and quizzes, we'll give you in-depth insights into your performance. Plus, as you'll see throughout the lesson, I'll scribble quite a lot of things on the document that we use, right? So those documents are made available to you in the form of PDFs with the annotations, right? So whatever it is we discuss, I'll scribble on the document. All that will be made available to you once you subscribe to the platform. Now, coming to the point, there are quite a lot of subscription models available to you, but we all understand that any learning journey for a competitive exam is a long journey. It's a lengthy journey, right? So, keeping that in mind, I would recommend that you opt in for a longer subscription period so that you give yourself that opportunity of time, that wealth of time to develop the comfort levels when it comes to the subjects, when it comes to the platform, and when it comes to the educator you're learning from, right? So because all that happens fairly quickly when it is when we are learning physically, right? But this is virtual learning, so give yourself that gestation period. And use my name Prankur, first name Prankur. Use my name to avail an extra 10% off on any of the subscriptions that you go for. Let's dive right into critical reasoning now. Let me read out the question, and then I'll give you a couple of minutes to choose an answer, and then I'll move into explaining it all. Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports? So, this is a strengthening question. Most strongly supports the pharmaceutical industry's argument against the challenge made above. Now, what is the challenge made above? The pharmaceutical industry argues that because new drugs will not be developed unless heavy development costs can be recouped in later sales, the current 20 years of protection provided by patents should be extended in the case of newly developed drugs. However, in other industries, new product development continues despite high development costs, a fact that indicates that the extension is unnecessary. This is a trigger word with however. you know we can always anticipate the argument turning on its head when we have words like however, but, yet. So these are trigger words that you have to keep in mind. Now read the passage, or rather read the options, and zero in on an answer. I'll give you 120 seconds and then I'll explain it all. Right, so let's just discuss the situation of the passage while you try to zero in on the answer. What is the situation in the passage? What is the premise? Right? The situation in the passage is that, we have the pharmaceutical industry and it's arguing, or it's rather saying that, development of new drugs is very, very costly, right? So, if we are to, recoup those costs in sales, we need more time. We need more time for the patents to be valid, because currently we only get 20 years of protection, right? We only get 20 years of protection. We need more time. That is what the pharmaceutical companies are saying. What happened? Yes. Just give me a moment. Right. So we need more time. We need more time. We are not doing very well with the 20 years that you currently give us, right? And then there is a shift in the argument. However, in other industries, new product development continues despite high development costs, a fact that indicates that extension is unnecessary. Now they are comparing pharmaceutical industry with other industries, and they are saying that new product development keeps on happening, right? Keeps on happening. The cost of R&D is very high, so we don't need extra time. We don't need to give you extra time. This is the argument. This is the challenge that they're posing to the pharmaceutical industry. Now what you have to do is you have to figure out from among these option choices, from among these answer choices, which of these will strongly support the pharmaceutical industry's argument, right? And understand that whenever we have evaluation questions like strengthening and weakening questions, one of these answer options will actually strengthen the assumption here. Strengthen the assumption. There is the premise, there is the conclusion. Now there is an assumption which forms the bridge to the premise and the conclusion. So in strengthening and weakening questions, you utilize external information. In terms of weakening questions, the external information will attack the assumption, right? That is how it weakens the argument. In terms of strengthening, it actually supports the assumption, right? So figure that out. Take another 60 seconds and then I'll explain it. And we'll follow the process of elimination. So let's look at answer option A. It says no industries other than pharmaceutical industry have asked for an extension on the 20-year limit on patent protection. Now, this is very specific to pharmaceutical industry, and we have to support pharmaceutical industry, right? So this, instead of strengthening, is weakening the argument, because it is saying that other industries have not asked for it. Why are you asking for it, right? So this is not strengthening. This is actually weakening the argument. So we eliminate A. B. Clinical trials of new drugs which occur after the patent is granted and before the new drug can be marketed often now take as long as 10 years to complete. So what are they trying to tell us? They're trying to tell us that, clinical trials, they actually take 10 years to complete, right? So after the patent is granted and before the new drug can be marketed, it almost takes 10 years. So we are losing out on 10 years. So do give us that extension. This is what they're saying. We are not able to utilize 20 years to the fullest because 10 years actually go into setting up those trials, right? So that is why this is kind of making logical sense to me, and I'll put this on the back burner and read through the other options. There are several industries in which the ratio of research and development cost to revenues is higher than it is in the pharmaceutical industry. Again, it's not strengthening, it is weakening, right? D. An existing patent for a drug does not legally prevent pharmaceutical companies from bringing to market alternative drugs, provided they are sufficiently dissimilar to the patented drug. This does not do anything to the argument. Instead, then it means that patents are not useful at all. If we are already using alternative drugs, patents are not useful at all. So it does not strengthen the argument one bit, because it is leaving patents unnecessary. E. Much recent industrial innovation has occurred in products, for example, the computer and electronics industries, for which patent protection is often very ineffective. Again, this is talking about other industries. We don't want to talk about other industries. We want to support pharmaceutical companies, pharma companies' arguments, right? So this is kind of out of scope for me. B is making the maximum sense to me, because B is telling me that, dude, I'm not able to utilize the 20 years that you're giving me in my patent protection. I'm only able to utilize like 10 years, because the other 10 years go into setting up my clinical trials. So please extend my patent period, right? I hope you understood this explanation and that you arrived at the same option. If you did not, I hope you understood my rationale for arriving at option B, right? Let's move on to a sentence correction question now. As its sales of computer products have surpassed those of measuring instruments, the company has become increasingly willing to compete for the mass market sales they would in the past have conceded to rivals. Take 90 seconds to solve it, not more than that. Allow me to give you a hint now. Allow me to give you a hint. This is a subject verb agreement question. Focus on the main verb, and then from the main verb, reach out to the subject, see what is the subject, yes, and see whether the subject and the verb are in agreement. As its sales of computer products have surpassed those of measuring instruments, the company has become increasingly willing to compete for the mass market sales they would in the past have conceded to rivals. Who would in the past have conceded to rivals? The company, right? So this is your subject. This entire bit, as it sales से लेके measuring instruments तक, this is what? This is your modifier. So you don't even have to pay attention to the modifier. You can just cut this out and focus on the sentence from here. Who would in the past have conceded to rivals? The company. What is the company? The company is singular. What is this? They is plural. So we already eliminate options A and B, right? Because they are plural. Now let's look at option C. That in the past would have been conceded previously to rivals. This is again passive voice. This is changing the voice of the sentence, right? It's changing the voice of the sentence. So we eliminate option C as well. It previously would have conceded to rivals in the past. It would in the past have conceded to rivals. Figure out from among D and from between D and E which is the more suitable option. Right? Understand that this previously, and when we say in the past, this is becoming what? This is becoming redundant, right? We are already saying previously, so we don't have to say in the past, or we are already saying in the past, so we don't have to say previously. This is redundancy, and we try to avoid redundancy in our answer options always, 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 right? That is why it would in the past have conceded to rivals makes more sense to me, and I'll go ahead with option E, right? I hope you've understood this. First, we identified, from questioning who would in the past have conceded to rivals, the company would have. The company is our subject. Company is singular. That is why we eliminated all answer options that had plural pronouns. We did not need plural pronouns, right? Let's move on to a critical reasoning question now. Which of the following, if true, most seriously weakens the guidebook writer's argument? Let's look at what the guidebook writer is saying. The guidebook writer is saying, I have visited hotels throughout the country and have noticed that in those built before 1930, the quality of the original carpentry work is generally superior to that in hotels built afterward. Clearly, carpenters working on hotels before 1930 typically worked with more skill, with more care, and more effort than carpenters who have worked on hotels built subsequently. Which of the following, if true, more seriously weakens the guidebook writer's argument? So, this is again a weakening question. What do we call them? We call them argument evaluation questions. Argument evaluation. figure out which of the options actually refutes the assumption. There is an assumption, clear assumption in this passage. Let's identify the situation in this passage. What is this passage trying to tell us? What is this passage trying to tell us? The passage is trying to tell us that we have hotels throughout the country, and we've noticed that, or rather, the guidebook writer visited hotels throughout the country, and then the guidebook writer noticed that there were hotels which were built before 1930, and the quality of work in those hotels is really really nice, right? It is in fact superior to hotels that came afterwards. So then they're drawing a conclusion. This clearly is a trigger word. Clearly, carpenters working on hotels before 1930, they worked with more skill and care. They put in more effort, right? So based on the carpentry, based on the quality of work in the hotels, they are drawing conclusions on how carpenters worked, or how skillful those carpenters worked, and they're drawing a contrast, right? What is the assumption here, and which of these options weakens that assumption? Okay, to my head, the assumption here is that all hotels which were built before 1930, they survived, right? That all hotels are surviving today. And that is why the guidebook writer is drawing a comparison between hotels that were built before 1930 to hotels that are built afterward. That is the assumption. Option A, the quality of original carpentry in hotels. Now, even if you did not identify the assumption, let's follow the process of elimination, right? And I'll explain it to you. The quality of original carpentry in hotels is generally far superior to the quality of original carpentry in other structures such as houses and stores. Are we concerned about houses and stores? No, we're not concerned about houses and stores, so I eliminate A. Now, what is option B? Hotels built since 1930 can generally accommodate more guests than those built before 1930. Uh, is this something the guidebook writer is concerned about? The guidebook writer is more concerned about the kind of carpentry, the kind of woodwork that is in the hotels, right? So the guidebook writer is not concerned about whether the hotel has 200 rooms, or the hotel has 500 rooms, or the hotel has 10 rooms, right? So we eliminate B. C. The materials available to carpenters working before 1930 were not significantly different in quality from the materials available to carpenters working after 1930. Instead of weakening, this is strengthening the argument, right? Because this is telling us that, if the materials are also the same, then maybe those who worked before 1930 were actually more skillful. They actually worked with more care. They made more effort. If the materials are the same, the tools are the same. So we eliminate C as well, because instead of weakening, it strengthens the argument. D. The better the quality of original carpentry in a building, the less likely that building is to fall into disuse and be demolished. Now, what does this tell us? This tells us that if, you know, these hotels had better carpentry, right? Just give me a moment. Yeah. If these hotels had better carpentry, then that means their building survived. The other hotels that did not have better carpentry, those are the hotels that, that are not being used today, or those are the hotels that were demolished. So our data set is flawed. Our focus group is very, very, very small. We're only considering hotels that have survived the times, the test of times. What about the hotels that did not survive the test of times? Right? That means the kind of carpentry in those hotels was not up to the mark. So can we then conclude about carpenters? Can we then conclude about the fact that those carpenters who worked before 1930, they were more skillful, they were more careful? Maybe in the case of many hotels they were not, and that is why those hotels got demolished, right? So this is making logical sense to me. Right now, do you understand how from that assumption I've reached this weakening argument? If I assume that all hotels survived, then this is telling me that no, bro, all hotels did not survive. Quite a lot of hotels got demolished, right? That is why I'm going to go ahead with option D. Let me still look at option E. The average length of apprenticeship for carpenters has significantly. I am not concerned with average length of apprenticeship at all. Out of the scope of the argument. Let's move on to a sentence correction question now. Equestrian enthusiasts predict that the alleged abuse of anabolic steroids among horse trainers would subside as long as the testing of the animals is more random and more rigorously enforced. Allow me to give you a hint now. Focus on this word predict. What tense do we use whenever we have the word predict? Whenever we are trying to predict something, right? If you attended my lesson on predict on tenses, you would know what triggered this word actually gives us, right? This is a big hint. What is the tense we should be using when we have the word predict in our sentence? I can safely eliminate options A and B, right? Can't I? I mean, I have the word prediction, that means we're talking future tense, right? We're talking future tense. Now I have to choose between option from among options B, C, D, and E. Can eliminate option C as well. Will have subsided. Do I need future perfect? I don't need future perfect at all. This is a sweeping statement, right? This is talking future tense. This is saying that enthusiasts predict that the alleged abuse of anabolic steroids among horse trainers will subside if I don't need future perfect, right? They're trying to state, they're trying to state something. They're trying to assert something. They're trying to iterate something, right? So will subside if the random testing of the animals were more rigorously enforced, or if will subside if the random testing of the animals is rigorously enforced. Do we need were here or do we need is? What is a better construction when it comes to future tense? When you're trying to predict something, will subside if the random testing of animals is more rigorously enforced. वर के साथ आपका आगे टू भी आता है, right? Will subside if random testing of the animals were to be rigorously enforced, right? That is why I'll do away with option D and I'll go with option E, right? Plus, if you noticed carefully, would subside if the testing of the random animals were, right? We don't need random animals, we need random tests, right? So option E looks to be the correct answer. Let's move on to another critical reasoning question now. Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports the view that it would not be advisable to try to eradicate agricultural pests that go through a caterpillar stage by spraying croplands with the enzyme mentioned above? So, there is an enzyme that will be mentioned in the passage. Let's read the passage. Caterpillars of all species produce an identical hormone called juvenile hormone that maintains feeding behavior. Okay. Only when a caterpillar has grown to the right size for pupation to take place does a special enzyme halt the production of juvenile hormone. This enzyme can be synthesized and will, on being ingested by immature caterpillars, kill them by stopping them from feeding. So clearly, we are trying to take some harsh steps in order to stop caterpillars from feeding. So what do you have to do? You have to go through these five options, and what do you have to figure out? You have to figure out which of them supports the view that it should not be done. We should not be doing this. Out of these five, there's one option that tells us that we should not be doing this. Which is that option? Okay, I hope you've reached your answer option by now. Let's discuss the situation in the passage. They are telling us that there are caterpillars of many species. They are saying all species. That means there are quite a lot of species that have caterpillars. Now they are saying that caterpillars of many species, they produce something called the juvenile hormone, जिसकी वजह से caterpillars start feeding on leaves of the plants. They eat and eat and eat, and then they shit and shit and shit. This is what caterpillars essentially do. Only when a caterpillar has grown to the right size, they start secreting a special enzyme. जिसकी वजह से आपका जुवेनाइल हार्मोन का प्रोडक्शन बंद होता है, after which the caterpillars they stop feeding. Now they are saying that such an enzyme can be synthesized in a lab, and if we spray it, then it will kill those caterpillars because it will stop them from feeding. So if the caterpillars cannot feed, they are not eating, that means they will go hungry, and that means they'll die. Now, which of these options tells us that we should not be doing this? Option A: most species of caterpillar are subject to some natural predation. We are not concerned with natural predation. Why? Because we want to synthesize an enzyme and kill them. Right? So let's eliminate option A. B: many agricultural pests do not go through a caterpillar stage. We are not concerned with those agricultural pests because we are only concerned with species who go through the caterpillar stage. C: many agriculturally beneficial insects go through a caterpillar stage. Now, what are they saying? They are saying there are some insects that are beneficial to us in terms of agriculture. So if we kill those insects, we need them. That is why they're beneficial, because we need them. So if we kill them, then their benefits would be something that will have to be synthesized in the lab as well. So do we want to do that? Do we want to kill insects who are actually beneficial to us when it comes to our agriculture? So this is making some sense to me. This is actually a warning sign when it comes to not spraying the croplands with this enzyme, right? So this is telling me don't do this. That is why I'm putting this on back burner, and I'll go through DNE. If I don't find something better in DNE, I'll go ahead with option C. Option D says, since caterpillars of different species emerge at different times, several sprayings would be necessary. That's all right. We are not talking about the number of times we have to spray or we do not have to spray. So this is not really telling me not to do this. Although the enzyme has been synthesized in the lab, no large scale production facilities exist as yet. I'm not concerned about the time period. What if I set up those facilities tomorrow? Right? So, again, this is not telling me not to do this. I need an option that tells me, Prankur, do not do this. Only option C is telling me that. So, I go ahead with option number C. Right? Let's move on to another sentence correction question now. A representative of the Internal Revenue Service usually finds most people are willing to cooperate during an audit, yet they become agitated, defensive, and suspect uh, computer error. So we clearly have a list here, right? We clearly have a list. Look at the list. Yes, I've given you a big hint. Right. So we have fines, right? Fines के साथ क्या जाता है? Representative of the Internal Revenue Service usually finds that, right? We need to insert that for this to be idiomatically complete. Finds that most people are willing to cooperate during an audit, yet they become what? They become agitated, they become defensive, and they become suspect computer error. That does not make sense, right? So because if you remember my lessons on parallelism, what do I say? We always bracket off the list from the rest of the sentence, and then the rest of the sentence it applies equally to every element of the list, right? So become agitated, become defensive, and become suspect computer error does not make sense at all. So we eliminate A. Plus, after finds, I need that. So I eliminate B as well, right? Finds that most people are willing to cooperate during an audit, yet they become agitated, defensive, and suspicious of computer error. And they become suspicious of. So this is making sense, right? So I put this on the back burner. And they become agitated, defensive, and suspicious of. Okay, that people are mostly willing. Most people are willing. People are mostly willing. The meaning here is changing because of the way we are using mostly. So I eliminate C. That most people are willingly cooperative during an audit, yet they are becoming agitated, defensive, and suspect. They are becoming suspect does not make sense at all. We don't need it to be are becoming at all. So I eliminate option E as well, and C is the only option that is making sense to me. Right? So let's solve this last question of the day, another CR question. If, on the basis of the evidence above, it is argued that PRP contracts increase worker productivity, which of the following, if true, would most seriously weaken that argument? Let's Another weakening question here, another argument evaluation question. Weaken the argument. Let's read the passage. Firms adopting profit related pay, PRP, pay wages at levels that vary with the firm's profits. In the metalworking industry, last year, firms with PRP contracts in place showed productivity per worker on average 13% higher than that of their competitors who use more traditional contracts. Now, you have a passage. What is the premise of the passage? What is the situation of the passage? The premise is that they're telling us what PRP contracts are, right? The profit related pay contract. So if the company is making a lot of profit, you will be getting paid a lot. If the company is not making as much profit, you won't be getting as much salary. Now they are saying in metalworking, PRP contracts, they are in place, and they showed that productivity per worker on average was 13% higher than some of the competition that don't use PRP contracts. ठीक है. अब इसमें आपको क्या करना है कि इसमें आपको बताना है कि वी आर सेइंग पीआरपी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स की वजह से वर्कर प्रोडक्टिविटी बढ़ी है, बट if there is one of the options that tells us that there is some other reason behind productivity increasing, then maybe the cause and effect relationship is weakened. We have to weaken the cause and effect relationship. They are saying कि PRP contract की वजह से productivity बढ़ी है. So figure out if out of the five options there is an option that is telling you that no bro, there is no cause and effect relationship here, right? There are other reasons behind the productivity going up, then we'll go ahead with that option because that will be weakening the argument, right? So take 90 seconds, figure out the answer option, and then I'll take you through the process of elimination. A. Results similar to those cited for the metalworking industry have been found in other industries where PRP contracts are used. This does not weaken the argument, this strengthens the argument, right? Because this is telling us कि हाँ, PRPs की वजह से productivity बढ़ रही है. So I eliminate option A. Option B. Under PRP contracts, costs other than labor costs, such as plant, machinery, and energy, make up an increased proportion of the total cost of each unit of output. See again, they are dissecting this into cost, labor cost, and machinery cost. We are not concerned with that. We are concerned with productivity and whether PRP is actually, increasing the productivity. So we eliminate B as well. C. Because introducing PRP contracts greatly changes individual workers' relationship to the firm, negotiating the introduction of the PRP contract is complex and time consuming. We don't care about that. We only care about whether PRP increases productivity or not. D. Many firms in the metalworking industry have modernized production equipment in the last 5 years, and most of these introduced PRP contracts at the same time. Now, this is filling a logical gap. How? Because they are telling us that, in the last 5 years, we've modernized our operations. If we've modernized our operations, we are using modern equipment, we are technologically advancing, then that means that could also be a reason for productivity going up, right? Does not necessarily mean that it is only because of PRP contracts that our productivity is going up. So, this is inserting another reason into the picture, right? So, I'm going to consider this E. In firms in the metalworking industry where PRP contracts are in place, the average take home pay is 15% higher than it is in those firms where workers have more traditional contracts. Again, they're only saying where pay is more and where pay is lesser. We don't know anything about productivity, right? So that is why we'll eliminate E as well. D, my friends, looks to be the only correct answer because it is inserting another reason into the picture, and that weakens the cause effect relationship of PRP contracts and the productivity levels, right? So this was the last CR question of the day. Now we'll do one last SC question. The Center for Public Integrity has discovered that drug companies obtain people's health records through the internet either to contact them individually and suggest alternative forms of treating various illnesses, or the estimation of the market of each new drug they produce. Don't take more than 90 seconds to solve this. I'll give you a hint. Either X or Y. This is the correlative we are using in the sentence. X and Y, they have to be parallel. They have to be uniform in their construction. Look at either to contact them or the estimation of. Right? This is a parallelism question. Either to contact or to contact के साथ क्या parallel जाएगा? Estimate or to estimate, right? The estimation of, for estimating, they want to estimate, it wants to estimate. We'll do away with all these options because only option B is parallel to either to contact them or to estimate the markets of each new drug they produce. So guys, with this, we've reached the end of today's lesson. I hope you had fun solving all the CR and SC questions that we solved today. Quite a lot of them. We did quite a lot of them one after another, right? So go through this lesson once more, right? Go through this once more. Uh, I hope you did not get as many questions wrong, but if you did, right? If you did, it makes sense to go through the lesson again, right? Go through the video again, and you know, when you're going through it again, press pause when you start with a question. Time yourself. When it comes to sentence correction, don't take more than 90 seconds. And those 90 seconds also have to come down to 60 seconds. But right now, don't take more than 90 seconds. When it comes to critical reasoning, don't take more than 120 seconds. Right? Solve those questions. Time yourself. If you're getting them wrong, just go through my rationale, then press play. Once you've solved it, press play, go through my rationale. Even if you're getting it right, go through my rationale and see whether your process was similar to my process, right? If it wasn't, comment on the video. I'll be delighted to know what your process is, right? I am always curious about various strategies when it comes to solving these questions. So do that, keep on practicing. And also, this was, I guess, the 13th in this series, right? If this is the 13th, then go through the 12 parts that have come before this episode, right? Go through all of them. Soonly we'll be beginning with reading comprehension as well, but till then, uh, keep practicing. These are the pandemic times, so stay safe, stay strong, and stay mellow. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye bye.